ready because tonight we're going to party like it's 1987. Newsweek. You remember Newsweek? The News Weekly that took the news out of Newsweekly is rehashing the Wimp factor attack on Mitt Romney, first used against Vice President George Bush 25 years ago. Yeah, that's fresh stuff. I'm Steve Green. This is Trifecta, and here to look at Newsweek and Mitt Romney's overseas trip. Two men who have fought the Wimp factor to a bloody draw. That's not true. Two men who have done that. No, they haven't. Scott Ott and Bill Whittle. All right, gentlemen, that beacon of truth and fair reporting, Michael Tomasky. He says Romney is just too insecure to be president, hiding his tax returns, dodging reporters, pandering to his base. Well, Scott, you look at all that. Doesn't Tomasky have a point, even if it's a quarter century old?
Well, I mean, you could argue that some of those, that Romney ought to realize the reality of modern politics and that some of those things have to be released. Yeah. But to say that somehow Romney is afraid of, fierce guys like this Newsweek reporter, that somehow he's cowering in fear before them. These people have no idea what it takes to run a business, to make the kinds of decisions that Mitt Romney has had to make on a day-to-day basis for the past however many years he's been doing this. They have no idea the kinds of tough calls that need to be made when you're sitting in the governor's seat. And they think that somehow this is going to intimidate Romney after he's put millions of dollars at risk, both of his personal money and the money of others that he trusts. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, yeah, and George H.W. Bush turned that Wimp factor thing around on Dan Rather 25 years ago and ended up winning, I don't know, almost 57 states. Bill, ages and ages ago, well, mid-July seems like forever, the complaint against Romney was that he was a vicious, predatory capitalist, and now I guess he's a vicious, predatory capitalist wimp. But I want you to check him out here with NBC's Brian Williams.
You are looking for a, quote, incredibly boring white guy for your vice presidential nominee. Can you confirm or deny?
You told me you were not available, but you're not.
Touche, Governor.
I love that moment. It might be my favorite from the campaign so far. The Wimp just made fun of one of the most powerful anchors on TV. Bill, you want to see more like this?
Yeah, I love it when any candidate is quick with the draw. It's always a pleasing thing to see somebody who can have a little bit of self-deprecating humor out there, especially delivered in a timely fashion. That's kind of the definition of wit. Let me just say this about the Wimp factor, though, Steve. Normally, I'll preface something like this to say not to toot my own horn, but in this case, I won't, because I'm about to toot my horn and your horn and Scotty's horn too. In the age of the internet and the age of anonymous commenting and so on, to get out there and to make any kind of public position, to be a champion of any public position, liberal, conservative, whatever the case may be, is to invite the kind of comments, the kind of hateful, personalized comments, personal threats, personal death threats, threats to your safety, to your family's safety. We all three of us know what that's like being out there. So my personal feeling is if you're running for any kind of office, if you're in the public sphere at all, you self-selected are not a wimp. To run for president of the United States, to have the things said about you that are said about Mitt Romney, have the kind of lies that are generated against you, to have to think about the fact that for the next 4 to 8 years, probably for the rest of your life, as a matter of fact, you and your family are going to have to travel in the company of men armed with machine guns because the entire world is out to kill them. Or kill your family or your loved ones just to get back at you. That doesn't sound like a wimp to me. That doesn't sound like the kind of guy who's afraid of much of anything, if you really want to know. I think it takes a lot of courage to be a public figure out there today.
And I'm glad that kind of criticism goes towards members of both parties, because I hate to see what would happen if somebody thin-skinned got elected to the Oval Office.
Wouldn't that be awful?
Scott, I know we're having fun with this, but I'll be honest, I read this stuff over and over again, well, for 25 years now, and it's tiring, it's exhausted. Not like I want to give up, but I'm just weary of it. How do we fight it?
Well, first of all, I think you need to fess up and say that you haven't known how to read for all of 25 years yet. I mean, my goodness, how old are you? But then, it's funny. I think you don't have to. If you're the candidate you don't have to fight every one of these things that comes along. You just take this as the price of admission for what you've
Right.
chosen to do with your life.
Right.
I got to tell you, there are,
All right.
you know, I haven't been in the military. I wasn't any great athlete in high school or anything. But there were two things that I've done in my life that I would put on the same plane of fear factor. Number one was the decision to run for local office. And number two was stepping out of an airplane at 3,000 feet. Now, my understanding is George H.W. Bush did both of those. In fact, George H.W. Bush was still stepping out of airplanes when he was pushing 90 years old. I don't know if he's still doing it every year. And my guess is that Mitt Romney has done a lot of things that we don't know anything about that would curdle the blood of these wimpy little journalists.
Yeah, and the first time George H.W. Bush jumped out of an airplane, it's because his plane had been shot down. Enemy fire, Japanese. All right, Bill, this new wimp, he went to London and told the truth right there about potential security problems at the London Olympic Games. He went to Israel and said that Jerusalem is its capital. He went to Poland, where he was warmly greeted by Lech Walesa, a man who I think knows a thing or two about personal bravery. Could it be? Could it just be that the progressive left is projecting just this one time?
Well, obviously you're onto it, Steve. You know, it's not even so much projection as it's desperation. It's the shiny, hey, look, it's a squirrel strategy of Barack Obama's campaign. They tried Heartless Vampire, and not only did they not get any traction on Heartless Vampire, it actually made Romney's numbers look better with all these attacks on Bain. So now they're going to go for the wimp thing. I'm glad you mentioned both Jerusalem and London and Poland, because Victor Davis Hanson wrote an article about the state of California and the world today and the West today, and he just used a phrase in passing called a kingdom of lies. And that's where we're living now. We're living in a kingdom of lies. And the bravest thing you can do in a kingdom of lies is simply get out there and speak the truth plainly. London's Olympics are clearly having major problems with just ticketing and security. They don't look like they're ready for prime time. He was right about that. He goes to Jerusalem and he says in Jerusalem that Jerusalem's the capital of Israel. That's speaking the truth. That's not trying to have it both ways like the president does. And he goes to Poland and talks with a guy who knows what creeping socialism looks like, a man who refused to meet with Barack Obama because he knew exactly what Barack Obama represents to the one true ally of freedom in the world. That's the United States. Of course, Mitt Romney is accepted by Lech Walesa. So those are three kind of ringing cases of speaking the truth during this time of kingdom of lies. And I'll close by saying this about Newsweek and their wimp factor thing. Newsweek was bought for $1 a couple years ago. I thought they overpaid. But we hear now that Newsweek's print edition is on its, when I say on its last legs, we're talking about the last few weeks now, apparently, before that once venerable magazine goes away. So when you asked earlier, what can we do to fight them? We do what we do. We stop buying their product. And when we stop buying their product, they go out of business. And they deserve to.
I'd buy that for $1. You know what, folks, I'm not sure exactly what this has to do with the wimp factor, if anything, but something struck me when I read the news about Lech Walesa, and Bill hinted at this. This week, he all but endorsed Mitt Romney after a visit to Poland's Tomb of the Unknowns. Now, last year, when President Obama visited Poland, Walesa refused to see him at all. So one of the world's foremost anti-communists can't bring himself to talk to Barack Obama. That's something to think about, isn't it? And maybe that has a little something to do with why the left would rather invent fake issues like the wimp factor. For PJTV, I'm Steve Green.